Hopefully you get some photographs taken. And then you're done, right? No. You're going to need to do at least some touch-up, which means that you need some sort of photo editing software. The Adobe Creative Suite is the big gorilla in this circus. You're probably already familiar with Photoshop. If you don't want to give the Adobe Corporation all of your money for the rest of your life, you can pursue some of the alternatives out there. The most popular free version is what's called GIMP. It has many of the same features as Photoshop, and though its interface is a bit clunky, it's free. Other options include Paint.net, Photopea, Sumo Paint, Pixlr. I will confess I have used none of those, but they come recommended by various people. And then Apple cultists swear by Procreate. Photo people will suggest that you take your photos in TIFF or RAW file format. The idea here is that JPEGs, because of the compression involved in trying to make them slightly smaller files, can theoretically degrade over time as you open and close them. If your source images are TIFF or RAW, this won't be a problem. Most of the time when you're distributing your images, you are going to save them as JPEGs, though you might need to make PDFs as well. One trick for preserving your JPEGs is to not open the file. Make a copy and rename it, and work with that. You can build separate portfolios by copying your JPEGs and then saving them at different resolution sizes. Speaking of which, there is no industry standard on exactly how big your file should be, so mostly follow the directions for whatever opportunity you're applying to. It is a good idea to go ahead and create a couple of portfolios at fairly common sizes, one of which is 1500 pixels on the long side at 300 dpi. Another common size is 1200 pixels on the long side, saved at 72 dpi. Make 2 portfolios of 20 images saved at each of these, and you'll be able to quickly apply to most opportunities. We're going to quickly look at a few features in Photoshop, but there are way better tutorials all over the YouTubes. Check them out. Just so that you know what to look for, you do want to be able to change the image size. Click the File tab, scroll down to the Image Size ... option, and you'll get this box. On this image capture, they have linked the resolution with the height and width. Usually you want to adjust it so that only the height and width are locked together. If you change one, the other changes automatically so that the aspect ratio of your image doesn't change. You want to be able to manipulate the resolution independent of the size. Click the arrow and you'll get a drop-down menu with other measurement options, such as pixels and centimeters for those of you who actually want to measure things. Do know that most of the time the box for resampling will be checked, and if you make your image larger than the source file, the computer will have to fill in the rest of the information. This is something you want to avoid whenever you can. The next most important adjustment that you'll want to make is to correct the levels. Click the Image tab, then select Adjustments, and one of the options in the next menu will be Levels. It'll open up this lovely histogram that shows you the distribution of values in your image. You want to set the white and the black just past where the main information in your image lies. Click this little triangle and slide it to just past the peak. Your white will start over here and you'll slide it over there. It'll significantly brighten your image. You could adjust the midtones as well, but for most of us, simply defining where white and black are in your image is enough. Another big one is to adjust the color balance. You want to get the white balance correct in the camera. To fine-tune it, click Image, Adjustments, Color Balance. The tool that opens might look different depending on exactly which version of Photoshop you're running. Mine, instead of having a drop-down menu for midtones, highlights, and shadows, has options down at the bottom. But in either case, you do want to make sure that you're paying attention to which you're manipulating. Are you shifting the tones that are midtone, highlights, or shadows? You can adjust whether it leans to red or cyan, magenta or green, yellow or blue. Play around with them and remember that gentle changes are probably better than extreme ones. Why would you mess with the color balance? For situations like this, where you've taken a photograph and it has an obvious pink tone to it. We can correct that so that the image reads more clearly white in the background. I've also adjusted the levels in this one, and you can see the way in which there's more contrast and clarity compared to the sort of gray haze in the original source file. And obviously, I've cropped out a lot of the dead white space. That's something that you do with the crop tool, which is this little guy. One final tool that you want to know about in Photoshop is the Clone Stamp tool. You'll find it in the tool menu over here. The Clone Stamp tool allows you to define an area of your image by holding down the Alt key and selecting part of your image. Why is this useful? Because you want to be able to touch up things like glare and dust spots, but you don't want to fill them in with just a solid color. Sampling something nearby will give you something that has both the color and texture of that part of your image. If you create three-dimensional work, you're probably going to want to create a seamless photo background. There are several videos in the resources section that can show you how to do this. Very common is to use white as a background, though if you have a light-colored object, gray or black might be a good choice as well. For irregular shaped 2D artwork, things that you can't just crop to the rectangle of the image itself, you can shoot on a white wall, or one trick I learned was to buy some black felt and put your piece on it. The felt will absorb the light enough that usually you'll get a seamless flat background without any distraction. A final note, especially those of you who are doing 3D artwork, you probably want to create images that are actually composites so that we can see multiple views, the front, the back, a detail, the piece being worn, or some other kind of scale indicator within the image itself. So rather than sending out 3 images, you've composited them into one image that is actually much more informative for the viewer. Because your images are your work for most viewers.